Hello, hello, everybody. It is another Tuesday morning, therefore you know what that means. Breakfast with Bill time. Hanging out here with my two favorite geniuses on the other side of the room over there. Bill and Matt, how you boys doing this morning?
Thank you, Evan.
Good morning. We just got promoted from slouch to genius. That's pretty impressive. Battlefield promotion. Thanks, Evan. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being with us. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be with you guys on Tuesday mornings, or if you're catching this on recording somewhere down the road on YouTube, it's great to be with you guys. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking, Matt and I, about we started with gratitude in the series as we move in towards the end of the year, and then we talked last week about intentionality. We're going to continue on with intentionality today, thinking more about intentionality as we move into the next year. How do we start to really live the life we want? And when we think about intentionality, I think it's a big word for purpose, right? So it's, living with intentionality is another way of saying we're living with purpose or trying to find purpose. And so many of us are. I think, and when we don't have that purpose, and Matt and I have talked about the importance of having it on paper and how much that adds, that clarity comes to us when it's on paper. When we look at all the craziness of 2020 and we think about going back to an anchor, going back to something that roots us, if we have our purpose every week on paper, and we know what we're marching towards, it can start to bring us some peace. Right?
Yep. And I think that's a key takeaway quickly before we move on. A lot of our clients have actually implemented this into their weekly schedules, Breakfast with Bill. So we've had a lot of conversations around it. But a few key takeaways, I think the theme or the virtue of the year really hit home for many people because the purpose, intentionality, like you just said, it's big, it's broad, it's a lot to handle, it feels like. So keeping that core theme, that core virtue, and going back to it, how did I live this today? Where did I miss an opportunity today? I think another thing, starting now, we always talk about the habits, 21 days to form a habit. And the light switch, January 1st, we're not going to hit the lights and say, okay, let's go. We now have different habits, right? Start now. Start the habits now. We have 21 days. So don't wait, even though you're planning.
What a great point that is, right? Like we always think about the magic of January 1st. What magic is there on January 1st? Why not start today? Right? So then when January 1st hits, our feet are on the ground and we're running.
And then finally, just the planning and writing it down. And simplistic, but I think going back to that, and everyone, much like maybe a diet or going to the gym, I think everyone looks at planning at the beginning of the year, but that was another key takeaway.
So as we get into proper planning, that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we start to introduce that proper planning into our routines, into our habits, so that come 2021, we're living the life we intend to live. We're living with purpose. We're living with intentionality. And I ask you to think about today's discussion, not just as a salesperson, right? Or not just as a sales leader, but as a person. And as a person, what roles do you play? Are you a husband? Are you a wife? Are you a mother? Are you a father? Or are you a son or a daughter? Are you a friend? So, as we think about today, think about it from all the roles of your life. We're going to ask you to identify those roles. But think about it as a person, not just as a salesperson.
And why is that important?
Because I think we're whole people, right? I think it's critical. We're whole people. And I just had a great conversation with a client yesterday, a wonderful man. Leads a country and a region for a large international organization, highly successful, just had his first child this year. And we talked about who he is as a person, right? Not just who he is as a vice president or who he is as a leader, because we can't shut it off. I mean, many of you, we talk to you. We have people that wake up at 6 a.m. They have to walk 10 feet to go to their office because their computer's sitting over there on the table. And you start working at 5, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and guess when they're ending? 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So, we're not just work creatures. What we're doing in work impacts who we are as I think, spouses and parents and friends, and what we do outside of those work hours. Matt always likes to say, we're not just 9 to 5 people, right? We're also 5 to 9 people. So that those two lives, where they intersect, that's who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just color in the lines.
And I think the pandemic this year has put a lot of stress on that. People working from home. I know I work differently at home than I do in the office. And I think it's not only necessarily when we think about planning as the why, what are we going to do? I think a key aspect of it is, what are we going to say no to?
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
and
huge.
we always look at it as additive. But I think many of us, whether it's in leadership and delegation or empowering others, or even in the personal life, I saw it happen having my child, right? And just refocusing on what you have to say no to, different priorities. And I think that's especially apparent too, as leaders, as salespeople. It's not just adding, it's saying no to certain things.
That's huge. The people we work with that struggle with peace and struggle with commitments and struggle with being dependent are people. And by the way, I'm looking in the mirror when I say this, they have a speech impediment that doesn't allow them to say no. And I struggle with that. And oftentimes Matt is my no, right? There's oftentimes where we'll be going through either ideas or somebody comes in with an ask or whatever it is, whether it's from a charity side or an involvement side. And Matt just looks at me and he's like, "You're not doing that."
Charity side, you're making me seem like Scrooge right
Yeah, well,
now.
it kind of is.
Couldn't
but
use a different example.
But, there's always those asks that are demands on our time or demands on our resources. And we like to say anything less than a conscious commitment to the yes is an unconscious commitment to the no, right? And if we're not consciously committing to doing certain things, we're unconsciously committing to doing anything. And that doesn't lead us to the outcomes and the results we want. So, our goal is to manage our time appropriately. We think the greatest visual of time management comes from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, habit number 3, keeping first things first, Covey introduces this concept of a time management matrix, right? And the time management matrix gives us this visual on that all things tend to be either important or not important. And Evan, I think we have that visual to share, right? So Covey says that all things tend to be either important or not important, and they tend to be either urgent or not urgent. And you think about the things you do throughout the day. What are some of those things? As we start in the bottom right of the not urgent, not important, we all live there. We all see it. It's busy work, phone calls, time wasters, angry birds, excessive TV. I would argue most everything we do on our cell phones, other than email and actually phone calls with people we love, can fall into this category of not urgent and not important. The next quadrant or category is the urgent but not important. Those are some of the interruptions we deal with throughout the day. Less of these now that we're not in an office environment anymore. Some of the meetings, reports, phone calls, some of the email we have to go through. It's just stuff that needs done, but doesn't add any great value to our day. Then we get into the urgent and the important, and that's, the pending crises of the day and the pending problems, all the deadlines we have to meet, meetings, commitments to clients, commitments to others, preparations for meetings and that are happening in the near term. That's all the urgent and the important. And then where the magic happens is in that quadrant 2, which is that not urgent but important. That's where relationship building happens. That's where we can think about long-term preparations for projects and deliverables. That's where our strategic planning happens. That's where empowerment of others, not just as a leader, but as a friend and as a spouse and as a father and a mother. That's where empowerment of others is that huge quadrant 2 time, right? And if we were to give labels to these quadrants and we were to say what they really are, we would find that their quadrant 1 becomes our daily reality, right? Quadrant 2 becomes quality time. When we get into the bottom part of this scale, it's really deception and waste that we can give as a label. So the goal of this planning is to get into more quadrant 2 time. So how do we start to plan and start to think about how do we get into that more quadrant 2 intentionality of the quality time? And I think once we understand these quadrants, it becomes easier for us to set those really important strategic goals, quadrant 2 goals for every role of our life.
And I saw a quote by Covey: "The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." And I thought that was striking, especially for many of us that might be scheduling for the first time. That vigor of January 1st to really think about those priorities. And I think that the meaning of today and the challenge of today is to just, where are you spending most of your time? In what quadrant? I think we all know that we need to move more towards quadrant 2, but I can think of many conversations that are in that urgent, straddling that line, because I think oftentimes as humans we get back to our comfort zone, and the crisis, the busy, the immediate gratification, we get energy from that. But realistically, we should be spending more time in quadrant 2.
Yeah, it's another great quote that we use. This is part of a time management section we do for leaders and clients. And one of the quotes we use in this section is, "Are you addicted to the adrenaline rush, or are you just conditioned to it?" And I think so many of us become conditioned to that adrenaline rush that we don't know what to do without it. We don't know what to do when we have downtime. We don't know what to do. And this is me usually on the weekends, by the way. Susie looks at me and she goes, "Go to work." Because I just walk around, I look at things, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm not used to being in this environment. So, I've become conditioned to that adrenaline rush. And, you think about this. Matt mentioned Scrooge before, and Matt is not Scrooge. He's close, but he loves Christmas. He just doesn't love people, right? So no, but we saw a great movie the other night, one of Susie's all-time Christmas favorites. It's become one of mine, and it's Scrooged, right? That's such a great movie with Bill Murray. I can't believe that was made, God bless you, in 1988 already. But Scrooged, and he gets visited by Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. And he changes when he realizes there's an end, that time is finite. He's going to come to this end of his life. And you think about our days. Time is the most precious gift we have. But it is also so finite. God bless you. It is so finite. And if we knew that we were going to die, I don't know, tomorrow, if you knew you were going to die Friday, how much time would we spend in the waste category? You think about all those things that go into that quadrant 4, the quadrant of waste. How much time would we spend there? Last night I was playing backgammon on my phone or whatever before I went to bed. Why was I doing that? Right? Like, it's really not that big of a stress reliever. Why was I doing that versus actually talking to my wife or praying or do anything that adds value to my life? Why waste it? So, I love going through this section with clients, this session, because it's a reminder to us how we live our time better. So I think once we understand these quadrants, and we can't, do this full justice inside of 20 or 25 minutes, but, think about the roles that you play in your life, and then how do we set quadrant 2 goals for each of those? I think it's important we define our roles, whether you're a salesperson, sales leader, but they go beyond that. As I said, my 5 roles in my life are husband, father, my faith, my leadership role that I have here internally, and then as a coach externally to my clients. And then I have a 6th role that vacillates between volunteer, son, friend, whatever, given the needs of the week. But think about each of those roles, and as Matt said, prioritizing, what was it? Prioritize your, it's not so much about
Scheduling your priorities.
it's about prioritizing your schedule, right?
Opposite.
Okay. What Matt said. But, when you think about that, when we think of the roles are anything, this is said another way, anything that demands our time or deserves our time. So what relationships deserve our time that are special enough that we should plan our time and have weekly goals for those? And then what roles in our life demand our time? Work is certainly one of those, right? And maybe the various roles we play at work. But again, for me, it's husband, father, my faith, being a leader here, being a coach externally, and volunteer, son, or friend. So, and Matt, you've had some growth this year and some changes in your life, obviously with the addition of Lucy to your family. How's that impacted some of the planning or the roles that you prepare for in a week?
Well, I think from a sheer scheduling standpoint and just the flow of my day, especially when she arrived, of when we get up, how I aid Paige, my wife, I have a weird work schedule sometimes. You know me, I like to be out by a certain time. I go home, shower, do what I need to do, be home, and then keep working late into the night. But to be on and to be able to produce the next day for each and every client, I needed to switch that around a bit, knowing that I might be up the late shift with Lucy. But, I think it also changes something deeper than that. For me, it's, the why. Right, it's who you're doing this for as well. But I just to reiterate, I think it's extremely important to think of it role based, because again, we've said it, and if I interact with you, I've said it many times. You can't be someone different 9 to 5 than 5 to 9, and we see it all the time, that things creep in from life, personal life, into work and performance. So absolutely 100% should do it from a role-based perspective.
Yeah, when we have those role-based goals, it doesn't matter about the little things that come in, or sometimes the medium things or big things that come in. We still have our focus for the things we want to accomplish that week. We're living this right now. Matt has a boiler in his house that provides heat, and it hasn't been providing heat for about a week.
Yeah.
So, Matt's schedule's been a little bit crazy, where during the day he's had to go home and do certain things, to start prepping a fire, doing this, go out back, chop wood.
Pioneer days.
Yeah. It's like poor guy's living like a pilgrim. So, trying to get this heat going and everything. But that doesn't matter when those little things come into the week, because we still have our visuals in front of us of what's important and how we're going to live our life. And by the way, is for all the salespeople out there, where do you think prospecting falls on the quadrant, right? Is prospecting important or not important? It's important, right? Is prospecting urgent or not urgent? Usually
number 2.
Not urgent.
Yep.
Right? So prospecting tends to be one of those quadrant 2 goals. Guess when prospecting becomes urgent as a salesperson? That's right, when you're put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. And then when you're put on a performance improvement plan, it's too late for prospecting. So if you're a salesperson, prospecting, developing relationships, developing pipeline is the absolute greatest quadrant 2 goal you could have, and the greatest quadrant 2 focus you could have. So before it becomes urgent and important as a salesperson, because that means it's too late, because that means you have 90 days, and a PIP is really just 90 days that a generous employer gives you to update your resume and start looking for your next role. So think about that. But for those that know that you want to make that guy or that transformation or take that journey into quadrant 2, think about those important things you could be doing in your life. And, I remember this became really important to me a couple years ago. I was preparing to do this session with a client, and I was going through the slides and doing this and, whatever. And I thought to myself, what if my kids, because we have all these pictures around the house and of, like family rules that was a 2nd grade project for the kids and this and that, and they're all out, and we save those, and they're on all over the place in the house. And I remember thinking, what if the kids had to do a project today where they drew a picture of me? And we all have had children who have done those type of projects in school. And I thought, what would I be doing? And I was mortified to be thinking that I would be looking at my phone. Because at the time I thought of it, I was sitting in my chair over in the corner of the living room, and I thought, if my kids drew a picture of me today, would I be staring at my cell phone? I was horrified. And I literally remember dropping the phone. And that's when I went back to rededicating myself to weekly role-based planning and having goals for the week. And that week, my goal as a father became eye contact. So that was it. So every time I looked at that, I had it in my mind. Every day I'm looking at this planner, and this is off on the right-hand side of my planner, and I'm looking, father, eye contact, father, eye contact. So I knew that every night when I went home, the most critical thing I could do as a father was have eye contact. Because here I am, getting on my son if he looks at somebody and shakes their hand and doesn't look them in the eye, and yet what am I doing? I'm having conversations with my family looking at my phone at night. I was like, what kind of example is that? So eye contact became my weekly goal as a father for probably a year. And I just wrote it down again this week, by the way, because in this time of, just everybody being around and casualness, I was like, no, I need to be more attentive to this. So that's the goal, right? Get into your roles. Each week have a little weekly goal, and it could be small. I remember when the kids went back to school this year, my daughter Gina's a senior, Dante, he's getting older, all that. And I know how tough that is on Susie. So my goal as a husband was just to be supportive, to be assuring, right? To be kind, to be just that mindfulness. So of how we want to behave.
And I really think it's important to stay rooted in those goals, because if you just go back to my example, if I see, with Lucy or Paige and I have certain goals, life is going to happen. Your heat is going to go out at some point, or whatever that metaphor is in the future for you. That could totally paralyze some, but we can still get out of the crisis. We can still live intentionally even through it. And it was interesting how it kept me so focused on, all right, just supporting Paige. Right. I texted you last night.
Yep.
You talked about, hey, how cold are you right now? And I said, oh, I'm all right, but I did the dishes or whatever, because I had supporting Paige. So it helps me keep focused in the role at the time in the crisis, because it's always going to happen. There's always going to be things thrown at you. And so I think that role-based allows you to keep moving forward, to keep winning, to keep doing that next right thing, rather than poor me, why me. Look how much disruption this was.
Yeah, it brings you clarity.
Yeah.
All right. And the other thing that brings clarity is having that virtue of the year that we like to have called out for us. This year, we've shared with you guys many times, our virtue, my family virtue of the year, was gratitude. I made an executive decision on what 2021 is going to be. Have any guess? Gratitude. Yeah, we're going with gratitude. It's getting 2 years at least, because it's so critical and so valuable. And when you start with gratitude in mind, when you think about when you start with gratitude, you start with others, right? And it becomes less about us, more about others. It becomes more outward focus, and that's the path to peace, is being outward focused, right? Others focused. So, as I said, when I looked at my phone and I was thinking about what would my kids draw, I was struck by what a waste, right? What a waste of precious, valuable time. And that's exactly what it is. It's a waste of time. And how much time do each of us waste in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year with cell phones or with whatever is not important, right? Versus pouring into someone else. How many people that I know, how many people in my life could use a phone call tonight? How many people in my life could use something, an email, a text, whatever, that says, hey, thinking of you, wondering how you're doing, love to catch up, because we're becoming more isolated, right? But what do? I isolate more by going into that phone. So the time when others when others are suffering from isolation and need somebody to reach out to them, when somebody needs a friend, when somebody needs to know they're cared about, we turn towards isolation, which is going inward. And, I went into pick up pizza the other night someplace for us on a Saturday night. And I walked in, and there were like 3 guys sitting at this table. And they were middle-aged guys like me. And every one of them's looking at their phones, not talking. I said, you guys look like a bunch of teenagers. I slapped them, and they all laughed and instantly put their phones down. Right? I said, you guys are sitting here together looking at your phones. But it's just become what we are, right? So instead of wasting time looking at the phone, what else could I be doing? I could be living. Right? I could actually be living a life that's meaningful, that has purpose, that has intentionality, versus just watching other people pretend to live a life online.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you actually taught me early on was be where your feet are. And it's something that's struck me, and it's become especially important with the birth of Lucy Grace, is I need to be where my feet are. I don't need to be there holding her, a bottle on my knee, trying to do an email. Just be there and be there for the person in the moment. Yeah. We talked about multitasking. Oh, that was another thing that came up with a lot of our clients. Multitasking is a badge of honor for many, but it's a fallacy.
Yeah.
I did some other research, and most indicate around 40% of production loss when you try to multitask. Yeah. So it doesn't make you better, and it takes away. So be where your feet are is really important, whether it's in the office, at home, or even if it's in relaxing, because we need to uncharge, unplug, and relax. So be where your feet are.
Yeah, and be where your feet are is so critical with, especially when you're at home. And now, so many of you, there are no lines between work and home. Those lines have either been blurred in a best case or erased in a worst case. And you need to find that space to be where your feet are and be for your family. And that means, like, in the case of Matt, holding little Lucy Grace. And by the way, my advice to all young parents is, if I could do anything over as a parent, if I could have like one more day of something, if somebody says as a parent, you get to go back and do one more thing once again, you know what it would be? Hold my kids in my lap. Because that just one day you did it for the last time and you didn't know you were doing it, and it's gone. And then you have a 6'1", 215-pound son who doesn't really want to be cuddled and sit in your lap anymore, right? So those days just pass. So hold your kids in your lap and cherish that. But that's not the only thing that we should be cherishing. We should be cherishing our relationships. So if you want to make 2021 great, make it the first year of the rest of your life. Start with your time management, right? Pick that word that you're going to have for next year is the one thing you want to grow in. Whether it's a virtue like we've chosen for gratitude, whether it's something with discipline or whatever you want to do that's going to start to define the rest of your days. Pick that word. Find your roles. You have at least 3 roles. We always tell people you have at least 3, no more than 6. If you're getting out there into 23 roles, you're not going to be able to satisfy them and have meaningful goals for each. But for each week, you should have no less than 3, no more than 6 roles, I'd say. Be mindful of where you're spending your time. Be where your feet are, and commit to being intentional with your time. And I think that you'll find that 2021 can be enriching no matter what comes our way. Whether we have a vaccine, whether we have masks, whatever it is, right? You'll find peace, I think, and be on a better path. So, and as Matt said, building a great 2021 doesn't start on January 1st. Having a great 2021, having a great rest of your life starts today.
Yep.
So thank you all for your time.
Thank
we're
you.
coming down on the Christmas counter. What's it say there, Evan? 16 days. Getting excited.
16 days, 15 hours until Christmas.
Oh, baby. Here we go. So thank you all for your time, as always. We hope you have a great day planning. If you need any help or have any thoughts, need any feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Take care and God bless.